Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is not the robots. It's a lie. That's what it is. It's most assuredly the robots, or at least one of them. It's got to be responsible for most of this stuff, one would imagine. It's a game for the most part about robots. Well, we do live in a world where things are not as advertised, so I guess this is just another in a long string of fallacies and deceptions brought to us by indie game developers. God damn them. It's by a company called 2D Array, and as you can see by the credits, a game by Eli Pilonen, I believe, or something along those lines, with audio by David Carney. It's quite nice, actually. The credit buttons actually show the credits, instead of taking you along this wild thrill ride of very, very slowly scrolling words. I guess there weren't all that many people involved in that. I also noticed Tiny Build was actually mentioned in the thanks there, which is interesting indeed, because they made games like Speedrunners and No Time to Explain. What is this about? It is a procedurally generated, roguelike, furniture-eating stealth simulator. Not necessarily in that order. And there are, most assuredly, robots involved in it. Let's have a look at the options menu, shall we? So here's your video. You've got your graphics presets here because this is a Unity game, but because they also know what they're doing, they have advanced settings as well. Now, there is a bit of a rumor, not so much a rumor, I think it's just a misconception that goes around saying that Unity games only really run off these presets. That's nonsense! You can absolutely have an options menu in a Unity game, just some people don't bother. In this case, as you can see, they got quite a bit. I don't think I saw all that much SSAO in this, honestly. Oh, that screen space ambient occlusion with the kind of weird black outlines and things, but regardless, options menu's pretty good. I don't think there's actually anything missing here for the most part. This, I assume this is the windowed mode button. I'm not going to press it because it would ruin the video, but I assume that's what it is. It's very strange that they'd make it an icon, not a word, but hey, never mind. Hey, you've even got VSync and everything. Yeah, so it's got what it needs. Controls are fully rebindable. And you can also bind controller and regular mouse and keyboard. I'm using mouse and keyboard for this. It works absolutely fine. The keys are not particularly complicated. The default next and previous item keys are a little bit weird, so I bound them to mouse wheel, which makes a hell of a lot more sense, and frankly, it should be done that way by default, as far as I'm concerned. Everything else is exactly what you'd expect, so there really isn't, as far as I can tell, anything missing here that you would really need in an isometric, roguelike, stealth furniture-eating simulator of some description. So I mentioned roguelike, and that's coming from the blurb of the game. It's not really roguelike, it is roguelite, as many of these games are. It has some roguelike elements to it. It does have permadeath, and it does have some randomly generated levels. It also has a progression system which adds more to the game the further you get. It doesn't really level you up. You don't really gain anything from that, aside from possible access to a wider range of abilities, but it doesn't make you more powerful. When you die, you go right back to the start, and it generates a number of office buildings for you to play in. There are also operations and challenges. Challenges are exactly what you would expect, and really damn difficult, I might add. I'll show you the Instagib challenge later. It's a goddamn nightmare. And then operations, these are really short campaigns that you can blitz through in a few minutes. I like that they're there, I guess. I'm not 100% sure what the point of them is in the grand scheme of things, because you could just play the campaign again, but it's kind of nice nonetheless. I think for the most part, once you've unlocked these, you'll be able to play from a harder difficulty at the very start and sort of play some of the more advanced levels immediately. So I guess that's maybe what the point is. Plus, it's nice to be able to just spend like 5 minutes to play through a little mini-campaign, get some progress, and then leave if you need to. Let's get into it and show you exactly what's going on. Here we go. So, I mentioned that it's randomly generated. It is. All of these office buildings are randomly generated and have a number of rather unpleasant traps in them from time to time. You see this laser spinning around there, so I'm going to be a little bit careful. This is you. Your purpose in this world is to eat furniture. Why? No one can honestly say. I'm sure there's a very good reason for all of it, but you eat furniture. You are fueled, in fact, by the furniture. You devour it, and this allows you to power up your robot and get to the next level. Ow! Well, I got caught out by that. So much for my end of level no damage bonus. So, I picked up a couple of crates there. They give a couple of different abilities, and like most roguelike games, they love to randomly generate that stuff in terms of, hey, here's a pool of stuff, we're gonna give you something at random. Because, well, we are. It's kind of a dick move for the most part, but never mind. So in this case, it's actually giving me sprint. Now, sprint is one of the least useful items in my opinion. So I'm going to throw that, and I'm going to grab this, which is blocks instead. So in this level, I'll do exactly the same thing. Eat as much furniture as possible. Try not to take any damage. Again, if at all possible. And then make my way through to the next level. And things will get progressively harder until I eventually and inevitably die. And I will most assuredly die. Now, it's a bit of a stealth game. It doesn't really show that all that much here, because you are not dealing with any sentry bots or any kind of automated defenses outside of these lasers, which mostly just involve you dodging them. However, there are stealth elements. You may have noticed earlier that I crouched down. Not only can I use that to crouch under the lasers, but I can use that to hide behind low cover. As you'll notice, there is a nasty looking little skull over there who is in fact a sentry bot that would absolutely love to ruin my day. So I'm going to hide from the sentry bot. Don't want it seeing me. It'll indicate that with the green lines on the furniture. Now, here comes the interesting part. So, have you ever had a stealth game where you have to eat your cover to survive? Probably not. Well, that's kind of what you have to do here, and this is not going to work out well for me. I'm going to use one of my abilities to hide from the damn thing and hope for the best. Please don't come over here. It's going to come over here, isn't it? Oh, it's blind. Thank God. I'm still very well hidden, it would seem. So, doesn't matter. The sentry bot did not see me. But, as you might notice, you have to eat your cover, which makes the game surprisingly tense. In order to get enough fuel, you have to devour most of the level, and that's what you're hiding behind for the most part. I'm going to drop this, and I'm going to grab invisible, because that's what the scanner is giving me here. Duck under this. And it's found me. Alright, time to leave. Well, I do have an invisibility item. I might have to actually use that here. There we go. Turn myself invisible. So hopefully he will now get the idea and leave. In fact, the music actually changes in the meantime, which I found really neat. I think you're getting the idea. Eat as much furniture as possible, get to the next level without dying. It's really that simple. It does get a little more complicated the further into the game you get, I've got to say, because you get stuff like sequences, which are a series of blocks that you have to hit in order to actually pass the level. Of all of the sentences that I could have used, I decided to use in order, in order. Talk about reiterating one's point unnecessarily, but that's the way that it works. That is exactly how the game works. It's not that complicated, but it is quite challenging. It's not an easy game. Perhaps it looks like one, but it most assuredly is not. As soon as the sentry bots were introduced, the thing became an absolute nightmare. There we go. And pop through there, and there we go. Cool, no damage. Excellent. And it keeps getting harder and harder. And as you level up, you will gain access to more features, and you will gain access, of course, to harder and harder levels. But you have to start at the beginning of the campaign every time. You'll also unlock challenges and those operations that I was talking about earlier. Now, it's actually quite a satisfying experience, I've got to say. The stealth element is very robust. The sentries are a little unpredictable, so you've got to be ready to respond to them at a moment's notice using your various powers and your ability to just hide behind various pieces of office furniture in order to actually beat the level. It can get very, very challenging indeed, and the random generation means that you'll never encounter the same level twice. I have experienced, however, a couple of levels which were absolutely nightmarish as a result of the random generation system, because I guess the system doesn't quite take into account some of the more ridiculous aspects of stealth, in the sense that you could have a sentry spawn down a narrow, unbreakable corridor that you can't really get past. I've had that happen, I think, twice in total. The best approach there is just to kind of rush it. So it's not like it makes you lose the level, but it does make you lose your level bonus, which is a little bit of a pain. At the moment, I'm just trying to sneak behind this sentry so that I can get back into the tube, which I should be able to do. There we go. No problem at all. So it's not like the random generation system is perfect. It does procedurally generate every now and again an office, which is quite silly, and it does mean the difficulty can spike around a bit, but that is kind of handled by the fact that the levels just get more complex as you go, and they unlock these different things like sequence, as I said before. So there are occasional difficulty spikes, but they're not too bad. They're pretty reasonable, and honestly, I do feel that that's the kind of thing that most people will understand when they're playing anything with the word roguelike involved in it. However, for my own personal enjoyment, it is unfortunately not quite what I'm looking for from a stealth game. Now, please do understand that I'm not actually condemning the game here. I actually think the game is pretty damn good for what it is. It's got a nice aesthetic, it's got some really interesting ideas. It also has a kind of Stanley Parable-esque feel to it. This sort of weird corporate conspiracy thing is, as far as I can tell, becoming a theme in quite a lot of indie games lately. And they have managed to turn it into comedy in the same way. There's some rather interesting little outtakes and audio logs that will explain the story as you go. Not everything is quite what it seems. Again, as usual. That's all good. And everything seems to be robust, but the problem is, like, from a personal perspective, I prefer my stealth games to have a little bit of combat in them, and this game does not have that. So, it is very much a pure stealth game, and that's not the kind of thing that I'm into. However, you might be. As always on this show, you shouldn't really be asking whether or not I like the game. Every now and again, I read comments that said, well, he didn't say whether or not you like the game. It doesn't matter if I like the game. It matters whether or not you would. So if I explain it well enough, in theory, you should be able to figure that out for yourself, right? Ow. God damn it. That's the theory, at any rate, if I do my job properly. If I don't do my job properly, then you might end up feeling a little confused. Also, I might screw up sentences. But I think that for stealth fans, this very well might be something to look into. It's got a lot of interesting ideas. I don't really understand the notion of the whole furniture eating, but as a mechanic, it works very, very well. As I sort of alluded to earlier, the fact that it's a stealth game where you have to eat your cover in order to beat the level makes the game extremely tense. It also means that you have to be very careful about what you do. You can't just hold down the spacebar and hope for the best. If you do, you will lose vital cover and you'll end up being absolutely destroyed. And it's tricky. It's very tricky. The game does suffer a little bit from that good old roguelike problem, in the sense that because it randomly generates the abilities you're going to receive, it does make some levels harder than they need to be, and it really comes down to random chance as to whether or not you get the right stuff. So far, I haven't got a single dig power-up, which, in my opinion, is the most powerful ability in the game, because it lets you knock down these permanent walls, which, more often than not, could actually break the level, because these walls are designed to make specific sequences very difficult to handle. However, if you can break those walls, suddenly you can bypass patrols and all manner of different things very, very easily. And as a result, it becomes pretty much the most powerful ability in the game. So if you get that quite early on, you will probably breeze through the first few levels. Since I haven't got it yet, it's a little bit more difficult. That can be a little bit of a problem. Also, if I was going to have any sort of minor complaints in regards to the game itself, it's the way that the camera handles, or in the sense that it doesn't actually handle at all. You have to handle the camera, and sometimes it can be quite difficult to keep all of the enemies in vision every now and again. If you're focusing on a particular area, a sentry bot might be coming outside of your actual field of view, detect you, and start gunning you down immediately. So you have to be extremely cautious with moving the camera around. You'd expect a game like this maybe to have something like a fixed perspective, and perhaps it would work better if it did. And then just kind of have a transparency system to allow you to actually see through permanent obstacles. But it doesn't, and they elected to give you free control of the camera, which I don't necessarily think was the best idea. It can cause you problems from time to time. That does not mean, however, it's a game killer. It absolutely is not. The game, in my opinion, is a really solid stealth experience with a nice aesthetic and really good ideas behind it. It's also got some pretty cool music as well. A little bit sleuthy. Not too shabby. Also a little bit dynamic as well. As I mentioned earlier, it changes if you're invisible, it also changes if you're detected, and so on and so forth, which is quite nice. So, conclusion. Before I show you the Instagib challenge, which just makes me cry. pretty damn good stealth game, actually. You might want to have a look at this. The idea of procedurally generated stealth that actually works well, I think, is a very attractive notion to a lot of people, because they don't necessarily have to rely on there being enough levels to entertain them. There's going to be pretty much infinite levels, so that becomes a non-issue. Also, I like the fact that they've managed to have different ways to experience that. I'm going to kill myself here just so I can get the progress, and then I'll show you the challenges and things like that. They could have just done the campaign, but having the challenges and also having the little campaigns, those kind of mini campaigns, is pretty good, in my opinion. I think that's a very strong way of doing it. And I appreciate that they've respected people with different time constraints and particular preferences when it comes to how the content is experienced. Alright, let's get some bonuses, shall we? Let's level up. Well, I wouldn't say bonuses. I've unlocked Sprint Plus. There we go. Cool. It doesn't necessarily tell you what you're going to get. It just gives you little hints there. So I got through that many. There's my bonus, and I didn't get a multiplier. So there you go. There's plenty of content to actually discover in this game. So let's show you the challenge, because, yeah, Instagib is a nightmare. So you got a fastest time here, so this is kind of a little bit of speed running involved. But this is the Instagib challenge. You have got to do everything, and you have one. Oh, and I ate my cover. This is... I'm going to instantly die now, because I accidentally ate the wrong piece of cover. Pop. Dead. Instant. So if you're after a stealth challenge, well, something like the Instagib challenge may very well be up your alley, I think. It also happens to have a really nice piece of music going on in the background as well. This is good. This is a good game. It's got some nice original concepts and some well-executed mechanics. My complaints are, for the most part, minor, and in the case of me kind of not liking the game, it's entirely subjective. Doesn't mean it's a bad game. It's actually a very good game. Up until, I think, the 19th of December, it is actually on 40% off as a launch discount, which is pretty hefty. Surprisingly hefty. So that might be something you'll want to look into. It's normally $10. It's actually now $6. So this is a title that I think you may be interested in. Go check it out, folks. It's called Not the Robots. It's currently available on Steam. And remember, it is a lie. My name's been TotalBiscuit. Thank you very much for watching. And I'll see you next time.